Welcome back to LittleLee and Rose. Today we are going to do something super fun. We're going to kind of deviate from what you normally see me work with, because you always see me work with stainless steel or the plastic. But today we're going to work on these empty glass wine bottles. And we're going to make tiki torches for the patio or your yard or wherever you want it, or when you're camping, and put them in your trailer so that you have them for when you camp. There's a lot of uses for these. We're going to kind of give them an outdoorsy, rustic feel. And then I'm going to show you guys what to use to turn these into tiki torches. It's just a little fun thing to throw in with you guys. I know we love being creative and doing new different projects. And because I know I'm going to get asked probably a million times if at the end, I'm just going to tell you now, when I sell a set of these of 3, I'm going to probably be selling them between $75 and $80 for the set of 3. That kind of gives you a price breakdown of where you should be at. Now you can take wine bottles and just strip the labels off and reuse wine bottles, or these are at Hobby Lobby. These were inexpensive. You can get them in the glass aisle. They put their stuff on half price probably every other week. So you can get them really inexpensive for like $1, $1.50 for the empty ones. So what we're going to use for this first step, I'm going to be showing you guys all the steps and how to do this, is we're going to be using the white double primer. And this is the flat white. We want to use flat. Painter's tape, we're going to be using white glitter, and we're going to use epoxy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these started by taping them off. Because this is going to have a flame out the top, and epoxy is flammable to a certain extent. I mean, essentially everything will burn at a certain temperature, but we don't want to get the epoxy all the way up to the lip, because that just adds a danger factor that we don't need. So I'm going to be taping it off down low, and we're going to do all of our design down the rest of the glass. Okay, guys? So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tape these off, and we'll be right back to finish the next step. So I've got them taped off. They don't need to be perfect. Like I said, this is meant to be kind of a rustic look. So as you saw, I just kind of eyeballed it, ran the tape around. Doesn't matter that it buckles. That's all going to be removed anyway. We just want to be able to just spray paint just this bottom part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wear a glove, and I'm going to take a rag, an old rag, and I'm just going to hold it here so that I can't paint the bottom, and the rag will cover everything down here. And it'll cover all this part. And then I'm going to spray paint this. So if you're not really good at spray painting, this part doesn't matter. If you have drips and stuff, it doesn't matter, because we're going to cover this with glitter. But if you want to learn how to spray paint and not get drips, you can jump on my channel. Underneath this tutorial, it says LittleLee and Rose. You can click on that. It will take you to all my other tutorials, and I have one there on how to spray paint and get 0 drips. Because you will need to know that for the next steps of this tutorial. So what we're going to start out, though, is I'm going to go out and I'm going to spray paint these and get a nice, good white base on them. All right? We'll be back.
All right, guys. We are back, and we are going to do some epoxy work. Now, if you've never seen any of my tutorials and you've never worked with epoxy before, I'll just explain it just a little bit really quick. If you see me do this, you guys can zip forward about 2 minutes, and you will not miss anything. So epoxy, when you work with resins, they come in part A and B. I work with all food safe, because most of what I do is cups. Like this is a cup. And I don't want people's mouths touching anything that is not FDA compliant. So I'm wearing a chemical mask, as you can see. When you're first mixing this, it's extremely toxic while it is in the liquid form. Once it's hardened and cured, it's completely fine. You can eat off of it like a plate. But while it's mixing, it puts off some really noxious fumes that are really, really damaging for your health. So you want to wear a chemical respirator, and you want to wear nitrile gloves. Now, nitrile gloves are very different than regular gloves. These gloves are specifically designed to not let epoxy leach through them. If you just wear latex, the epoxy the chemicals will leak through them. And you might not feel like you have an issue in the beginning, but over time, the chemical builds up in your body, and you will become allergic to it or start having reactions to it. So even if you don't react right away, it could react down in time. Sorry, I just realized that one glove had some glitter on it. So I'm going to switch out gloves. And put a fresh glove on. It does not have glitter. Doesn't matter, because we are going to glitter it and paint it. I guess I could have left it on, but I'm so used to being careful with all these glitters, not contaminating everything. All right, guys, so what we do is we mix part A and B in equal parts. What we're going to do here is we use very, very, very little, small amount to put like a sticky coat on top of this wine glass. And then we're going to put the glitter over the top. And as it cures, it's going to grab that glitter and make it permanent. So I'm just mixing A and B together. When it's going to go as an coat, you don't really have to worry about bubbles because you're not going to see them anyway because they're going to be under the glitter. So I just try to mix it, and you got to be exactly even, dead even on your parts A and B, otherwise it won't cure properly. And if it doesn't cure properly, you can give yourself all kinds of toxic problems. So you want to make sure you measure correctly. I am going to stir very, very vigorously because I don't have to worry about bubbles. If you're going to be concerned about bubbles, you'll want to obviously stir slower and maybe use a plastic or metal stir stick to avoid some bubbles. But like I said, I'm not worried about the bubbles because we're not going to see it anyway. You'll see more on the top coats as we go that you will be more careful with bubbles because they'll be more visible. So once it's clear, after stirring it, you can see that that's now gone clear. It's full of bubbles, so that might be why it doesn't look clear, but it is clear. That means it's mixed. As you were watching me, you saw me scrape all the outside edges, the bottom, and the popsicle stick, and then stir again. And the reason I do that is to make sure every tiny little bit of epoxy gets mixed in. Because even if there's a smidge of epoxy that doesn't get mixed, it will leave a sticky spot on your cup because it doesn't cure. So what we're going to do is just pour about 2 mLs on the top of this. And we're going to do the hang method. This is called the hang method. And you just roll it down the cup, and you're just going to work it with your fingers down the cup. It should be an extremely thin layer of epoxy, guys, so it doesn't drip. You don't want drips. You just want to have a nice thin coat of sticky. So if it's really easy to move the epoxy, you probably poured too much. It should be a little bit of work to move it down the wine bottle here. So I'm just going to rub it and work my way down, get a little off the top, and keep rubbing it down the wine glass until I can feel all the cup is covered. Now you can feel it because anywhere your finger wants to stick, that actually means there's nothing there because it's not slick from the wet epoxy. All right, so that one is done. We are going to rotate. So what I did, you guys, is I took my holder that you guys have seen me build. So if you don't know how to build one of these holders, I have a tutorial on this on how to build a tumbler drying rack. And this is kind of just a makeshift because these holes are so small. I took chopsticks, put it down in the hole, and then now that's holding my cups for me, my wine bottles. So I'm going to turn it. We're going to do all 3 really fast. I'm very fast at this. It might take you guys a little more time than it did me because I do these all day. So I'm very, very efficient at doing the hang method really fast. Now this doesn't dry super fast, guys. It takes a full 72 hours for it to reach maximum cured state. It takes about 9 hours until it shouldn't be tacky, 9 to 10 hours, before it won't feel like sticky to the touch. Usually about 12 hours for it to actually feel firm and good. But if you're hitting 24 hours and it's still sticky, most likely you didn't mix correctly and you got your parts not even. But what you can try is if you end up with a cup that's tacky is move it to a warmer room. Now you don't want to move this anywhere where there's a human or an animal or baby breathing. It needs to be left in a warm room where there's nobody breathing this in because if it's still tacky, it is still toxic for your lungs. So you don't ever want to be doing this, guys, in a room with children or animals or other people unless they're wearing a chemical mask. So you see, I just put a little on top and start working it down and around. So I'm just doing all 3 so you guys really see. I get a lot of questions about this. People have bubbles or mistakes or it looks like it gets lumpy. Now, if you're using too much epoxy and this is one of your top coats and it gets all ripply, it means you've used too much. If the epoxy can move at all because there's too much of it, it will get a weird look, a rippled look, because it's not on one of my fancy turners. So if you've seen any of my videos, you know what I'm talking about, the machine that will actually spin this around and keep the epoxy moving when you have a thick amount. But this specific, and you will see it feature in this tutorial in a bit as we get to the next levels. All right, so this one is now completely coated. I'm going to wipe off my fingers and get set up, and we're going to do just got a piece of parchment paper down. I'm still wearing my chemical mask because the epoxy is still wet, and you need to protect yourself. I've got my white glitter ready to sprinkle and pour, and I've got a parchment paper. Now, the parchment paper makes it really easy to pick up the glitter once that pours off of this. So I'm going to just pull it off my drying rack. Now, this is why you paint it white, guys, is it makes the coverage of the glitter much easier to cover the cup, the glass. You can see that gorgeous sparkle. That's going to be peeking through of the rest of our design. Okay. So watch, I'll show you now. Well, what you want to do is take it and tap on a part that doesn't have epoxy, and that's going to get any excess glitter off. Put it on the drying rack again to hold it. Fold our parchment. So the other day I was in the grocery store because I needed to buy freezer paper, and I saw these Reynolds wrap. It's a package of these, and they're already pre-cut in size. And I love them because it already has the crease. It makes it really easy to pick up and work with your glitter. So those are it's just like a thing I found at the grocery store in the aluminum foil aisle. And they're just pre-cut sheets of the parchment paper. Okay, so now I'm going to let that one sit off to the side, and we're just going to do the rest. Okay. This episode and tutorial is the tutorial of we don't let anything get us down, because if you were in my Facebook group, you know that I am currently homeless because my house flooded while we were on vacation, and we basically came home to mushrooms growing up in our carpet, and so we have been displaced. But my craft room is separate from the house, so it's the only part that didn't get destroyed. So I can keep on working. So the show goes on, guys. We're sleeping in the front yard in a tent, but I'm in here making tumblers. So, and my group has been amazingly supportive. I've been absent from my Facebook group for a couple days because we've been trying to move out and deal with insurance and figure out where the heck we're going to live, because they're telling us about 2 months to fix it. So, I'm just not happy right now. But here we are. We're making some tumblers. So you can see there's all kinds of ways you can put the glitter on. You can put it on the bottom, shimmy it down to get coverage, sprinkle it. There's no real best way. It's whatever way works for you for getting the glitter on top of that epoxy. Now you can use Mod Podge if you don't have epoxy. I just really like epoxy, but if you don't want to work with epoxy yet, you can just use a bottle of Mod Podge, paint the Mod Podge all over the cup, and then cover it with glitter as well. I measured out almost the exact amount of glitter. It's awesome. Make sure it's well coated. Everything's got a lot of glitter on it. Tap it out. Okay, put it back on. Drying rack. I have a little glitter left over, and I had a little glitter spill there. Okay, I'm gonna just fold my parchment paper up. I can use it again and again and again. Put that off to the side. All right, now we're gonna bring these back in. I'm gonna show you what I do. So to be able to avoid less top coat, even though this is a very fine glitter, I still press it to the cup. And this makes it a lot easier to cover this with epoxy and get it to be flat and flush and coated with the least amount of epoxy, because epoxy is not cheap, guys. So we want to make sure we have to use the least amount as possible to get this covered. All right, so there's that. We're going to do that on all three. Just press the glitter into that epoxy, that small thin layer from the beginning. And that just helps it grab and hold really well. And makes it really tight to the glass, so that when we go to do the layers of coating over the top, it's easier to cover. Okay. So because we're using one color of glitter, guys, we do not need to clear coat spray this and seal it in, because we are not worried about colors blending. If you were doing more than one color of glitter, you would want to use a clear spray paint and seal that glitter in. Now, I'm going to take my gloves off because we are done with this portion. And, oh, maybe I should have left them on because I got to touch the tape. So now we're going to peel the tape, because you don't want the tape to cure underneath that little thin layer of epoxy. You probably got a little epoxy on the tape, on the edge of the outer edge of the tape where you slid it down, and you don't want that to basically dry and seal that tape underneath it. So we want to get the tape removed and then let this cure. So, okay, there we go. All right, so there's all three of them, guys. Whoop, I'll move this out of the way. I'll show you one. Off camera there. So this is what we have so far, guys. It's the wine bottle. There's a little glitter up there. It's a beautiful wine bottle, and it's just, right now, it's just painted glitter white. And we're going to let this cure for, I'd say, probably 10 hours. I'll probably work on it for the next step tomorrow. And what we're going to do is we're going to start coating it with epoxy over this glitter to protect this glitter for the next steps, because we're going to do a lot of fun stuff with this one. This is just our first step. So these are going to sit on that drying rack that you guys saw with the Chinese chopsticks on it. For probably, well, it's going to probably be about 12 hours before I get back to it. So there you go. All right, guys, we will come back in just a minute for the next steps.
So we're back, and these have cured overnight, and now we're going to move on to the next step. So what I need to do next is tape off, because we're going to get into some epoxy. So we don't want epoxy going all over this part, so we're just going to make a little barrier with the tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this tape, and it's going to be about a millimeter or 2 millimeters maybe above our white line. It's going to be just slightly above it. We want it above it because we want to make sure this gets sealed in really well with the epoxy all the way to the edge. So I'm just going to run this around. Then I'm going to show you how I hook these big old bad boys on my turner. So what you need with epoxy, it will self-level. So you need the cup or whatever you're working on, the wine glass or whatever you're working on, to be spinning in a circle, so that way the epoxy can roll around it as it cures. So I work, half of my turners are like this. I design them like this, where I have the rod and I run the cap of the PVC pipe up the rod. That way I have some support system here. I do this one because when I'm doing my long skinny cups, this bar actually supports the weight. So you can see I can slide this on. It won't actually attach to that because it doesn't fit. But then I just take my electrical tape and I'm going to hook it on. It always looks a little wonky when it's on this turner, you guys, when it's one of these unusual shapes. That's all right. It works for some reason. For some cups, everything has to be super duper level, and for some, it does not seem to bother, and it does not seem to bother these. So what I'm going to do is just take the electrical tape, and I'm going to twist it around nice and tight, putting a lot of pressure on the tape, and I'm just getting this hooked onto the bottle. So I'm basically just taping the bottle to the pole. So then I'm going to take my tape and run it, and I'm going to make sure I have about 1 inch, and I'm going to tape it straight to the rod. and make sure, go around it a couple times, make sure it's really attached, then go back up with your last little bit around the bottle, and that way it is on there and it's going to spin. I do one last layer with some duct tape or any bigger piece of tape just to double hold it, because it's always a bummer when something falls off one of these turners. So I just overdo it sometimes. Whoops, I tore my tape. Oh, that'll work. This tape tears real easy. Okay, so that's just a little bit of extra oomph to hold it. I've got these little pieces that tore off. I'll just hook them on there. So you can see it kind of warps and hangs down, but it doesn't seem to bother it when it's turning. So you guys, I'll go ahead and turn it on. You can see it spin. So far, these have been fine on the turner, even though the butts of them are a little wonky. You can see, let me see if I can move you guys a little. You can see it's a little tipsy-turvy. The bottom goes down a little lower than the top. I don't know if that's showing up on camera very well for you guys. Sorry, you can see my messy workstation. But that's how I attach these long-necked, skinny opening bottles to the turner, is just I tape them straight to the post. So now we've got this sucker turning. I'm going to see if I can move my turner back a little. Bring it. Yikes. My extension cord just went flying. Bring it back into frame, and I'm going to let this spin, and we're going to mix some epoxy and get the epoxy on this part. Now I've got the other two hooked up on my two other turners that have the same setup as this, so I can epoxy them all at the same time. All right, we'll be right back while I mix epoxy.
All right, guys, I have my chemical mask on now, so I'm going to be a little bit harder to hear, but I do have my microphone on, and hopefully it's picking up the sound of my voice pretty good. We are going to epoxy this now. If you've never worked with epoxy, you want to make sure you're getting art resin, not casting resin. Casting resin will dry very, very fast. So you want to make sure you get art resin. It has a bit more working time. But when you're working with it, you got to wear the gloves, you got to wear the chemical mask, like we talked about early in the video. So I'm going to use this silicone brush. This is just a makeup facial brush. And I'm going to use this to apply the epoxy. I have my special gloves on, and that's going to keep my skin from being in contact with the epoxy, but I am just overly careful, and these epoxy brushes make a really, really, really easy application. Plus it keeps my skin even that much farther away from the epoxy, which is always a good thing, because you, like I said, you don't want to be making contact with this epoxy while it's wet and uncured, because it is toxic. It's very, very rough for you. That's why we wear all the special protective wear, guys. So I'm going to really focus on getting a thin layer on the bottom and a thicker layer on top, because I know the epoxy is going to naturally move down towards this bottom side because it's sagging down. But I just really want to focus on making sure this top edge gets coated. We're going to try to add a little bit more epoxy than normal so that we don't have to do multiple coats. We're going to try to bang these out quick. They're being so pretty, you guys are going to freak out. And they're so fun to make, and they're so easy to make. You can use stuff that you found at a garage sale or a thrift store. You can buy any glass jars will work. I'm showing you guys on these wine bottles because I know that wine bottles are very easy to come by. If you just use some of your old empty ones that you were using for drinking, or you can find them cheap at Hobby Lobby, or even some bottles similar to this at a thrift store. All right, so people forget about thrift stores being an option of places to source stuff, but I love thrift stores and garage sale shopping. So, and a member of our Facebook group just got a button today because she went to a thrift store and found a turkey rotisserie for $5. It was one of those big, like, it looks like a microwave oven almost. And she's going to pull the engine out of it and make herself one of these rotating turners. And I thought, well, that's ingenious. It's such a good idea. So she's getting a button, guys. Button, button, button. If you don't know what a button is, then you are not in my Facebook group, because they are a very, very sought after item and collector's item from my Facebook group. And they're a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun in my group. We're like a little family working with our epoxy and our glitter. It's a good place to be, guys. If you have any questions about anything like this, you should join my Facebook group. We are a little family. Everyone's super helpful and supportive. We get to know each other pretty well in there. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of us, but there's a lot of us talking, having good conversation about working with epoxy and doing all this good stuff. All right, so I'm just putting a little extra on for good measure. It doesn't really need any more, but like I said, I want a good thick coat. So hopefully we only have to do one. So it's self-leveling, guys, so this will just slowly work its way around. There we go. All right, so that's perfect. So this brush, like you said, you saw, I didn't have to make any contact with my gloves even. Now I mixed too much, you guys, because I'm doing all three. I'm going to work my way through. Now I'm going to take a torch and we're going to pop these bubbles. So the reason we use a torch, guys, is because this is going to have a bunch of micro bubbles. You can actually look down in this epoxy. See all those little bubbles, guys? Those are on my cup. Now you don't want them on your cup because they will add texture to the surface, and you want to get a glassy, smooth surface. So we're going to use a kitchen torch. I found a good one. This is an older one that I've had forever. I found a really inexpensive good one on Amazon, so I've got the link in the drop-down menu under this tutorial, you guys, where you can find one of these. This is going to pop all the bubbles. You just turn it on, push. It just makes a little flame, and the oxygen in the flame draws that bubble to the surface. Sorry, the CO2 of the flame draws that oxygen to the surface, and the bubble pops. So all the little micro bubbles will be gone, just leaving you with the epoxy. All right, so you can kind of see here on the ridge, it looks ripply. That's not ripply, that's the epoxy moving. It's almost like a wave on the beach, and it's moving itself around the cup. That's why you have to spin it. Otherwise, it'll just go to the bottom. If this is not spinning, it'll go to the bottom and leave rock hard, cured epoxy drips coming off. So as long as it's spinning and moving and moving and moving, it keeps that epoxy level, and that's how you get a nice, smooth, glassy finish on your cup. So I'm going to finish out the other three. You see the point. Just coat it with epoxy. Epoxy is part A and B. You mix it, and it will get a hard, clear resin coat. I also have all the epoxies that I use linked under this tutorial as well. All the ones I have linked are food safe. This one doesn't necessarily need a food safe epoxy because we're not going to be drinking out of this. But I only work with food safe because 90% of what I do has something where people are going to be putting food on it or drinks in it or stuff. So I always just use food safe epoxy, even though it's a little bit more expensive, just to be on the safe side. All right, guys, I'm going to finish the other two with this layer, and we will be back into, oh, sorry, I almost forgot. We got to pull this tape. So immediately after you apply the epoxy, you go ahead and remove the electrical tape. By doing that early, guys, you have a nice, see, that's a perfect line. There's no epoxy anywhere. Now, if you wait like a couple hours, that epoxy starts curing on that tape, and when you pull it, it gets like these stringy lines because it's starting to dry, and it's almost like if you pull chewing gum apart, it gets those lines, and those drag up, and then you don't have a clean line. So you want to pull the tape immediately. All right, guys, we'll be back.
All right, so here we go. I've got two of them down. The third one is on the turner, so I will be completing that one as soon as it gets off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to apply our decals. You can see them. I've got them over here off to the side. I'm going to work off my fuzzy little fabric here because it will pick up a lot of fuzzies. Now, I have printed out 3 big dragonflies and 3 small dragonflies for each. Whoops, look at that little dragonfly. He's trying to get away. For each one. I'm going to make them pretty uniform to each other. They'll each have 3. Ooh, this one moved around too. Look at those crazy little dragonflies. Their little heads and bodies are trying to get away. So I'm going to be applying 3 of the big, 3 of the little, and to each cup. So what we're going to be using is, these are decals that I cut out with my Cricut machine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my transfer tape. This is just tape that's just slightly less sticky than the sticky of that, so that it can grab it and then release it. Oops, so we're going to pull the transfer tape. I'm going to lay it over the first dragonfly. I'm going to use my handy dandy little Cricut rolling tool. I'm going to roll it out. That's going to grab it. Then I'm going to peel it away, and you can see it just takes that decal with it. Then we're going to place the decal on the cup, or what, not cup, this is not a cup, the wine bottle. Rub it down. And remove this. Hopefully I rubbed enough. Looks like I did. All right. So we're just going to repeat that process and get these all finished. Oops, these guys are just all over the place. So what we're going to be using these for is essentially a stencil, so it doesn't really matter what color the vinyl is. I just happen to have a lot of black, and it was the easiest for me to just grab and use, so that's what I used. But we're going to be removing this vinyl, so essentially in the long term it does not matter. So I'm just going to be placing these around. Sorry, you can hear my kids. They're playing right outside my little studio right here. We don't have much space. Well, we're all stuck in the yard now permanently. We're camping in the front yard and the backyard because we were underwater there for our flood. And I'm sure you guys have heard about it in my group, and we've been talking about it quite a bit. So my kids are just kind of out there playing right outside. They're loving it, though, because they love to be outside. So Daddy's out playing with him while I film for you guys because I'm an addict. I love doing this for you guys. All right, so we'll put this one more up and down. So I'm just kind of spotting them around on this beautiful glitter. They stick down really well because of that layer of epoxy. All right, so oops, and there's a little bit of his tail. That's really funny. Okay, so now we're going to do the smaller ones. I just use my piece of transfer tape over and over and over until it runs out of sticky because I'm very frugal. They're so happy outside playing. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure if you're even picking that up on the mic or not, but they're really cute out there. Okay, so we're just going to 2 more. This little tool works great. Rubbing works too. If you don't have a tool, you don't need one. You can just rub it and it'll work. So I'm just putting these on randomly around the bottle, wherever there's a spot. I'm going to put the last third one up there. And let's make this one go sideways. Okay, whoop. Gorgeous. Stick that off to the side. So there is the first one. All right, so I am going to finish up the second one. I'm going to get this one all done, and we'll be right back. Well, I'm going to put you on high speed because you guys have seen it already. All right, here we are. Now our next step is going to be to take our painter's tape. Couldn't think of the word. Painter's tape. And we're going to tape it off again. We're going to tape up around here. And then we're going to spray paint it. So here we go. We're just going to do the same we did to make this nice edge. Right along there. While I'm doing this, I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about why we wear the chemical mask. So you want to wear a chemical mask when your epoxy is wet and fluid, or wet and tacky at all, because that's when all the chemical reaction is happening, and that's when you don't want to be breathing that in. Now, if you have a cup or an item like this and you put the epoxy on and it stays tacky and it doesn't get dry and firm and like get hard, you cannot just put a layer of epoxy over the top of that, because that still has epoxy toxins in it, because it's not completely cured. If it's not hard, it's not cured. So it can get people sick. So you want to make sure that you sand that all off, back off, wipe it off, sand it off, and redo that layer before continuing. Otherwise, it is defective. All right, guys, it also changes the integrity of the cup, because that layer is not cured, and so it will affect the finished product. Whether it looks like it does or not, it does. That's science, guys. It's just because it worked for you once does not mean it's okay. Because it does work. You can just cover it, and the new layer of epoxy will cure, but that underneath layer will not cure. It will not suddenly decide it's going to be hard and cured underneath there if it wasn't cured in the first place. So you have to remove that layer and start over with that layer. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we've got these two done. I get asked that question a lot, guys, so I'm going to start mentioning it in my tutorials. So because apparently that is something that I'm lacking when I'm talking to you guys about epoxy, because I'm getting asked that question quite a bit. So we're going to take these outside and do the same thing I did before. I'm going to just hold an old rag over my hand and cover this part and just spray these white. So this is the white I'm using. It's 2 times flat white primer. It's flat. You want to use a flat spray paint for this next step. You will see why, because we're going to be doing some stuff on top of it. And you want that flat texture to be able to grip what we're going to do for the rest of the technique. All right, guys, so we'll be back. I'm going to go outside and get these spray painted. All right, now is when it starts to really transform. We are going to do some wood grain alcohol inks on here. I have made my own wood grain ink. If you don't know how to make the ink, you can jump back on my channel. Just click LittleLee and Rose underneath this tutorial. It will take you back to my other tutorials. And I have one on how to make wood grain inks for under $6 for 3 colors. So we are going to do that in here. We're going to use one of the colors that I've made. We're going to use one that I've purchased. I also have a little jar of plain alcohol in case I want to dilute something. I can dip the brush in there and dilute it. So here we go. We're going to do some wood grain over the top of this. We're going to try to make this look like a rustic tumbler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop some of the ink, and I'm going to bring it up with the brush. And this is just a cheap little chip brush that you can get from Home Depot. So I just put a little drop and then work it up. And it just starts to naturally take the form of looking like wood grains. A wood grain on a log. You can add it. There's all different ways to get a different look on here. So you can see you can add it a little there. Just dab it on where you want it. Up and down. And as you go along, it starts to look like wood. It's very, very pretty. So if you have not seen me do a wood grain tutorial and you want a more in-depth tutorial, you can also check my channel out for that, because I've done a couple different style wood grains there. One is really cool. It makes it look like a whiskey or wine barrel. It's a very fun one. It's a very popular one to sell. So we're just working this up and down. I'm working on top of my silicone mat, you guys, and I also have my backsplash here protected, because sometimes when you do this, you end up flicking ink. Not even unintentionally, it just kind of goes everywhere. So I'm just protecting my furniture and working my way around this cup. So we're going to do a couple different layers with different colors to get some really, really good grains in there. So now when you guys saw when I first started, the surface was not smooth. And that's okay, because the texture of it will actually make this look more like wood. Now, if you want it to have no texture, then, oh boy, I'm getting glitter stuck to this. Ha ha ha, the glitter that's on my silicone mat is sticking to this glass onto the paint. So I'm actually gonna remove that. I don't want to get it. It's not gonna bother it any, but it's just, I'm a perfectionist. So I know this is gonna freak you guys out, me working on my white. It is completely washable, you guys. I wash this almost every day. So it's fine. I was just trying to make less cleanup work for myself. But there we go. We'll just be cleaning it up afterwards. So you can do a knot by going up and down, up and down. It almost looked like there was a fuzzy stuck there, but it wasn't. And then see how that starts making a knot, and then you add a little bit more. But you don't go as to the top or bottom as much. And you let it dry. Now, alcohol ink will dry pretty quickly, as you see while I'm working on this. Oops. So So I'm going to leave that one just as is. I think it's going to be just really pretty, just like that. So I'm going to put a little bit on the paintbrush, not a lot. I don't want a whole drip. And I'm going to finish out the center of that knot with just that little bit on the end of the paintbrush. Because if you put a whole drop, it's very, very, very liquidy. So you can see it, you get the brush marks in the inks as it's drying. You just keep brushing through it and it adds those streaks and it makes it look very, very natural. Like wood. I mean, it looks like we just chopped this tree down. So cool. Let's talk about while I'm doing this, let's talk about some common epoxy issues. Now, cleaning up the edge of any kind of tumbler or anything you're working with epoxy tends to be a big problem for some people. So if you've never seen me work with a hot knife, this is something I just discovered. Somebody in my Facebook group stumbled on it, and she even stumbled on it on accident while she was trying to figure out something while she was working on a different craft, and then thought, I wonder if this will work. And the hot knife is amazing. I will have a link for it. I probably won't use it here because I don't really have an edge up here to clean up with it or any need to, but it's an amazing tool. And so I will have that link for you guys. And what it is, it's basically like an X-Acto knife that you plug in and it gets very, very, very hot. And you can just almost like slice off epoxy. So when you have all that epoxy built up on the rim of your cup from it being on the turner and just naturally just getting in there, you can use that hot knife to remove that very, very easily without breaking the seal of your cup. Because you want to be very careful when you are removing anything from the edges that you don't mess with the seal, because that's very important to the longevity and quality of the cup and how long it will hold ice. If you break that seal, it's just like any other cup and it will not hold that ice for what we say is the 24 hours or 18 hours or whatever cup you got, what it claims to do. So it won't do it if you've broken the seal. So the hot knife just slices it off and won't break the seal as long as you don't put too much pressure on it while you're using it. You're going to hear my mother-in-law in the background, my Cuban mother-in-law. She's hilarious. She's talking to my kids. She's very loud, but I love her. She's in there playing with my kiddos. I can hear her. I'm not sure if the mic is picking her up or not, but it'll be funny. It's funny. Okay, so then we're going to do her butt. So what I do on the butt is I just put a little on the bottom and work out. I do them all different. This is just one of the ways I do it. I'm just laughing. Sorry, my mother-in-law is hilarious. And just keep the brush moving on it while it's curing. And that will give you those nice streaks and natural. It makes it just look very, very natural. So you guys have been very interested in doing the bottom of the wood grain. Now I've been trying to do some like tutorials in a row where I just do a basic tutorial and then I build up and get more and more extreme. But now that I'm flooded in my house, I'm living in my front yard with my triplets. Life got a little crazy, but we'll try to get back. So maybe I'll do the wood grain butt, like the sawed half on the bottom of these, just so you guys can see that in this tutorial. So there we go. We have one completed. I'm gonna hold it up so you guys can see. I didn't need, for this round, I didn't need any extra plain alcohol to dilute because it looks really, really pretty as is. So now what we're going to do with this, I'm going to finish out the second one, guys, just in the same technique that I did on this one. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put a clear spray paint coat over this. The reason you want to do that is because when we start adding the second color to add the details, the second color will actually wipe this first color away. And we don't want to do that. We want to build up. We don't want to remove any of this. So we're just going to do a clear coat spray paint over the top that will protect this layer. And then we will just add, and make sure you use matte finish, guys. You want to use a matte finish clear coat. And that way the ink has something to grab onto that matte surface. And then we're going to keep going with the second color. So I'm going to go, sorry, there's a bunch of fuzzy stuck to this. I'm going to go outside and get this spray painted, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, so what I was going to do is I was going to actually add the second color. But when I started doing it, I just did a test spot. It just came out too dark. And I don't want this to be a very dark situation here. I don't want it to be a dark project. So I'm going to leave it with the light and the single color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to remove all these little decals. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our little weeding tool and pull them off just like that. Whoop. And it's going to reveal that gorgeous white glitter underneath. Now this is going to be a tedious process, guys, but it's worth it. You'll see, it's going to be so, so pretty. My mother-in-law already wants to steal these. I told her she has to give me $100. Just kidding. Mother-in-laws don't have to pay. Unless you don't like them. I happen to like my mother-in-law. We almost kill each other almost every day, but we laugh about it because that's who we are. We're crazy. So most of this I'm going to do on high speed for you guys, but I just want to show you just very gently. Just use your weeding tool, whatever you use to remove stuff in your projects. If you don't have one of these, you can use a dental pick. Will work as well. But they have lots of different tools. You can find stuff at Harbor Freight, but this I just use the Cricut one because I like it. All right, look how pretty that is. It's so pretty and it's so shiny. Look, guys, it looks so cool. All right, I'm gonna switch you guys to high speed so you don't have to spend 35 minutes watching me do these all tediously.
All right, guys, so now what we're going to do is we're going to just do one quick little hang method over the top of this. I'm already wearing my chemical mask, that's why it might be a little difficult to hear me. I will try to speak loud because I've already got the epoxy mixed. I've got my gloves on. You're seeing a little extra today in the video because this is so tall. I couldn't get just the up close in the shot. So with the hang method, just like before, you just need a tiny, tiny bit. That'll be plenty. And we're just going to roll it and drop it down. This is just to get a nice seal over your inks so that they won't just rub away or wash away with water or alcohol or anything that touches it. This is just going to give you a nice shiny gloss to barricade it in and make it permanent. The epoxy makes it all permanent, guys. All right, there's that one. And just like that, see this? We're just putting those little few mLs, then we're going to pull the tape. Okay. If you use a lot of epoxy, you're going to get drips, so don't pull your paint right away. You want to use a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of epoxy, guys. You don't want drips or ripples and all that. The more epoxy you use, the more issues you're going to have with this method. It is a tiny, tiny drop of epoxy. All right. We'll do this second one real quick. Just so you can see that again. Just very, very little of epoxy. Just a little drizzle. Sorry, I mix a lot of epoxy because I'm always doing more than one project at a time. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to work that epoxy down from the top to the bottom. Once we do this, we're going to go in and do some more detailing. But I just don't want to mess and accidentally screw up my beautiful, beautiful wood grain. I would be so bummed if on the next round it somehow got rubbed off or messed up. Oops. So we're just going to make sure it's coated in one thin coat of this epoxy to just protect it. All right, and that one's good. And pull the tape. Now we're just going to let these sit for about 9 hours, guys, and we'll be back, all right?
So this next part, we've got these two. Now they've got the epoxy over the top. They're sealed in. They look good. I'm super stoked about them. They're so cute. Okay, so now the next step is we're going to kind of cover this. Now I didn't want the epoxy up here because it is flammable and, you know, safety reasons. Would it be a problem? Probably not. But just for safety, I want to make sure I'm teaching you guys safe practices. So we are not going to put the epoxy up high, but we are going to wrap it in this raffia. So what we're going to do is, this is from the dollar store, you guys. I just go to Dollar Tree. It comes in a pack of 3. And this is what we're going to wrap around the top. And we're going to be using hot glue and some super glue. So I've got my super glue here. I've got my hot glue gun here off to the side heating up, and we're going to start. But what we're going to basically do is get it started, and we're going to just hot glue and wrap it all the way up the top. All right, so I'm going to get totally set up. But like I said, this is just a little pack of 3 that comes from the dollar store. So we're keeping our supplies really inexpensive. Here we go. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I took 3 strips of this, and I'm going to tie a little knot, and that's just going to kind of keep it all contained together. And there we go. We're just going to tie a little knot in there to hold all 3 strips together. We're going to do 3 at a time. That way it just goes a little quicker and gets good coverage. But that's going to give you a little starting point. Whoop. Now we're going to use super glue and hot glue. The super glue is going to hold it permanently for the future. The hot glue is going to hold it in place for now. So what we're going to do is choose what we would kind of say is the back. Well, I mean, it's all pretty much the same. So we're going to take a little daub of the hot glue. Ooh, it might not be hot enough yet. It's getting there. It should be. All right, that's not quite hot enough. Almost. I can feel the machine is hot. So we're going to do hot glue and super glue. So the hot glue, like I said, will hold it in place for now, while the super glue kind of takes grip and holds it for permanently. All right, so we're just going to put a drop of that super glue down. This is the gel epoxy resin super glue. I like it just because it won't get runny. And there goes the regular hot glue. So we're going to put the hot glue right next to it. Okay. Then we're going to put that knot down there, and then we're going to hold it here. And then what I'm going to do is this tail, I'm going to super glue the tail, not super glue, sorry, hot glue, the tail up. And then we'll end up just going over that with the rest of the string, or whatever you want to call the raffia. Okay, then we're going to just, as we go, we're just going to take this and do a dot of hot glue and press this down, and this is just going to hold it in place as we go around the cup. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's meant to look a little wily. Little dab of hot glue. Take the string raffia, hold it down, and that will start kind of holding it in place. Okay, coming around, we'll put some right here as we come up to the knot. Now, every once in a while, I'm going to put a little zhuzh of the epoxy super glue, the gel resin epoxy. You can really use any super glue, you guys. I have different varieties. I just buy it at the dollar store. Some are more runny than others, and they're useful for other things. So I just kind of switch it up. But this one, like I said, I'm using the gel version so that it doesn't move all over the place. So see, I'm just butting this right up against the knot, and that's going to kind of cover that knot as we go. And then we're just going to keep working our way all the way around and up to the top. And I'm just going to do the same process of a little dot of this and a little dot of this. And these I'll put in less, not as much, just to hold it permanently in place. All right, there you guys go. These are your lanterns, patio lanterns. They're working really, really well. They look super cool. These are burning with citronella to keep the mosquitoes away. It's just a really fun project. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, they came out so pretty. I brought them inside. They're not on fire anymore because, well, I don't want to burn my house down. We've already flooded me out. We don't need to burn my house down as well. So I'm bringing them in just so you can get a really beautiful shot of them, just kind of in their glory. But they were so beautiful all lit up. I took a really quick video. My husband was helping me, so it was kind of funny. And I took some still photos, so I will add those to the video too, so you guys can see them all lit up and gorgeous. So far, everybody wants to steal these from me. They're so beautiful. So what these are, I'm going to move the camera around a little bit for this one, so you guys are getting a little behind the scenes view of my workshop here. These are really, really cool. They're just wicks that you can buy in a set of 3. I will have the coupon code for these, or what is it called? No, the link to order these, you guys. I found them, they're super duper cool, and they just gave me this really cool idea to do with these old wine bottles that normally would just be thrown away. But like I said, I got these. You can get these at Hobby Lobby in their on their glass aisle, and they always put their glass stuff on half price. But these came out so pretty. And there's so many options for these, you guys. This is just one way of doing this. And you can do any tumbler design you can do it on these types of cups and turn them into patio lanterns. I put citronella in these so we don't have a bug problem when we use them outside. They're going to be great. And like I said, I would sell this set for $100. There's a lot of detail. They're super beautiful, and people will pay that much money for them. I've already had people try to steal these. They're so cool. I'm in love. So I hope you guys learned something fun. I hope this was a good tutorial for you guys. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel and join the Facebook group and come have a chat with us. It's super duper fun. We have a lot of ideas. I go live and I do a lot of projects and repairs and all kinds of stuff within the group. And you got a lot of coupon codes and discounts through different companies through my Facebook page. So come on over and join us, and I will see you guys on the next tutorial. Bye, guys.